So, Jerry, how surprised were you that BYU, which I believe they were, I think, 20 or 21-point dogs.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, how surprised were you that Gonzaga lost?
Yeah, that's not the game I would have thought they would lose. You know, you'd think they'd lose away from home, but yeah, BYU seems to have their number there. That's their third straight win at the Kennel. And so I don't know if something about BYU, the way they match up, or something gives Gonzaga problems. Only at home, apparently. But, yeah, I was kind of surprised that was the game that they lost.
Okay, I can't imagine that it does enough, certainly, to unseat them from a top seed here. But what if they get bounced relatively early in the conference tournament? Any scenario where they're not a one seed?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I think that, in fact, this could be enough to get them off that top line. I don't think so yet, but I think it makes them vulnerable to being jumped, specifically by someone like Oregon or maybe UCLA. But I think the best candidate would be Oregon. If Oregon were to win all the way out, win the Pac-12 title, they'd win both the regular season and the conference tournament. And especially, you know, if they're beating Arizona and UCLA again, then I think that that's a team that could jump them just based on strength of schedule and the fact that they've only got, I think, 4 losses themselves. So I wouldn't rule out Gonzaga getting jumped even if they win all the way out, although I think it's more likely than not they'd stay on the top line.
What about Miami? Obviously, they had a big win on the road against Virginia in double overtime, that race to 50 that they had. But then they come back, and they beat Duke. I mean, Miami's kind of for real, it seems like.
Yeah, that's a team that went from, you know, we're not really thinking about them as a bracket team maybe a month ago to really playing well down the stretch of this season and putting themselves now comfortably in. They went right through the bubble from the bottom all the way through to the top and out. And it's been a really strong run of play at the end of the season. I think, you know, they caught Duke at a good time. Not having Grayson Allen certainly hurts Duke's offense, and that showed. But, you know, that's not Miami's fault. They did what they had to do, and it's a great win for them, and they're playing very well.
What's your number right now? How many teams in the ACC would you punch a ticket? You going 10? You going 11? Where are you at with that, Jerry?
I think my current bracket's got 9.
Ooh.
And I think that's probably going to be the number, give or take.
Yeah.
It really depends on how some of these teams finish the year. Wake Forest, Syracuse, Georgia Tech probably played their way out, maybe too far out now to come back. But, you know, those two teams in particular, how they finish the year is going to have an impact on the number.
All right, we're talking to Jerry Palm with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports bracketology expert. Now, I'm throwing out a team there that doesn't quite have the national profile, but I saw in person late January. Quite frankly, wasn't overly impressed, although I do really like their coach. Talking about Providence, and I know that they've wiggled their way into the conversation, Jerry, and Coach Cooley does a nice job up there. He lost Chris Dunn, who was a top 5 NBA pick, and not to mention Ben Teal, who foolishly elected to go to the NBA, and he's no longer there, at least at Providence. But when you beat Butler, Xavier, Creighton, and Marquette in succession, as the Providence Friars have, I mean, you're going dancing, right?
Well, they had to do that to make up for some bad losses earlier. So they're not a sure thing yet, but, man, that is, you know, an example of playing your way in, right? You know, doing what you have to do late in the season to make an impression on the committee. But the problem is because of the number of bad losses they have, they can't turn around and give that away. You know, now they've got to play a couple of games that they should win. I think they've got St. John's and DePaul left.
Yeah, they do.
You know, they can't afford now because they've got losses like that already, too many. They can't afford to just turn around and give what good they've done the last 2 weeks away in the final week.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned Michigan State, and I think they've done enough, especially this past win against Wisconsin. But why does this feel like they've taken steps back when Tom Izzo's teams rarely do this? You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, well, it's a very young team, and it got younger with the loss of Aaron Harris, to that knee injury at Purdue last week. That's a senior guard, so they depend very heavily on 4 freshmen, and that's not something that Izzo's used to having to deal with, and it's not something anybody's, except for maybe Cal. Calipari is used to dealing with, where you're relying so heavily on freshmen, and he obviously wasn't planning for this. But Schilling got hurt before the season. Ben Carter got hurt before the season.
Yeah.
Aaron Harris got hurt in the season. And all of a sudden, your veterans are dropping like flies, and these freshmen have had to try and, carry themselves through. And they've done a good job here at the end of the year. But let me caution you about Michigan State. They've won 4 out of 5. all 4 of those wins came at home. The last 2 times they played on the road, they got beat by 17 at Purdue and they got beat by 30 at Michigan.
Ooh.
And they've got 2 road games left that they could get beat. So Michigan State is not out of the woods yet. They're going to have to take this mojo that they've built at home on the road, and that's not always an easy thing for a freshman team to do.
No, I think you positioned that pretty well.
Yeah, and great moment, by the way, last night with Aaron Harris, who you were just mentioning, coming out and kissing the ground because that's his last game, obviously, there at Michigan State.
Pretty awesome. I want to throw this here by Jerry. We had a debate about this. It just kind of came up organically. It was either Thursday or Friday. I think it was Friday here on the show. And Billy Self, we know that 13 straight conference championships. I mean, you tie John Wooden at anything, you're doing something well. Nobody disputes he's a phenomenal coach. However, we know that his record is quite spotty when it comes to the tournament here. So can you weigh in? I mean, obviously, your bracketology, that's what you really do. Right. But you know all the teams, you know all the games, you know the losses. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Billy as a tournament coach?
At 8. I mean, I think he's terrific. You know, they've had some problems. I mean, I know the one year they were a high seed and, you know, Embiid gets hurt and they're not the same kind of a team. And, you know, so there's a little bit of bad luck in that. And there's a little bit of underperforming, but he's also won national championships. So, you know, it's not an easy thing to do to win national championships. And Kansas is always one of the elite teams in college basketball every single year. I would take Bill Self to coach my tournament team anytime.
Now, Gonzaga, we talked about, we detailed them. They lose against BYU. Where do we think they stand as far as number 1 overall? They still holding that position, or
I mean, the only place they were number 1 overall was in the polls.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what the polls are going to do, but the committee came out and had them as the 4th number 1 2 weeks ago. Baylor.
If they had finished the season, do you think if they had finished the season undefeated, conference championship undefeated, they still would have sat where they sat at number 4 overall?
No, because Baylor had dropped below them already.
Yeah.
So they were 3rd before the loss, at least in my mind, 3rd before the loss to BYU. Now I have them 4th again. I don't think they're going to be able to jump Villanova or Kansas unless one of those teams goes into a slump here at the end of the season. So probably 3rd is the best that they can hope for. I've got Carolina ahead of them now. There's a chance they could finish ahead of an ACC team because those teams could beat each other up to the point that none of them makes it as a 1 seed, or at least not ahead of Gonzaga.
You know, Jerry, we have obviously a lot of our audience also NBA fans, and there's just an abundance of great, electrifying point guards that are all going inside the top 10, maybe even the top 5. Who do you prefer of the crop of point guards for the NBA? Who do you think is going to be the best?
That's a good question. I think probably Fultz, but you know, you got him, you got Dennis Smith, and you got Lonzo Ball. Only one of them is getting any airtime because NC State and Washington are terrible.
Yeah,
you know, so it's I don't get to see as much of Markelle Fultz and Dennis Smith because I don't have to pay attention to their teams to do what I do. Lonzo Ball is terrific. You know, he's an electric player. If I were an NBA GM, I would be hesitant to take him because I don't know if I want to deal with his dad.
Yeah, we're going to get to that actually. Yeah, no, I hear you.
That's just my, you know, I don't know if I want to deal with the entourage of Lonzo Ball. But,
understood.
You know, he's an electric talent though. There's no question.